Hey, how's it going, Eugenie?
Good morning. Nice to see you. It's fine.
Good, good.
Nothing, nothing to complain.
Fantastic, fantastic. I I am really glad that you're joining the classes. What time is it right now in Russia?
It's 6 a.m.
6 a.m. Wow, man. On a Saturday too. That's crazy.
Yes, yes.
You didn't go out to party or anything last
I
night?
didn't go to I didn't go to sleep.
You didn't go to sleep. Wow.
Yes.
So you're partying all night.
Yes, and with Kalingo.
Nice, nice. Fantastic, man. Good to see you again. I was uh I was thinking about our class earlier today with the animals. So I was thinking it was all day today after that class.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny, but yeah, it's one of these things that I think is kind of really interesting. That kind of a universal appeal to different things, both with baby animals and some of the other things we're going to look at. So, but yeah, man. How was your Friday night? Did you do anything interesting in any of the other classes? Did you learn some new stuff?
Yes, I definitely learned a lot of new stuff, new vocabulary, and new some grammar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, One of the things that I wanted to also make sure about is did you have any questions about the stuff we talked about earlier today by any chance, or did that stuff make sense?
Mm, I don't remember my
I
classic answer.
Yeah, I think we talked
But
about contractions and like is am, is are, or the is not, am not
yeah,
negation.
I remember that, but my consciousness is a little bit fuzzy right now, so I I can
Oh,
say
okay. Okay. That's fine. No worries, man. And whenever you have questions, just let me know and I'll be able to help you out
yeah,
with anything.
okay.
Yeah, sweet. Francisco, how's it going? Welcome.
Hi Farhan, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Fine, fine, thank you.
How was your Friday night?
Well, it's been a kind of busy today, but I'm here at home and I'm enjoying this class.
Fantastic, fantastic. Welcome. Uh, have you guys met each other before, Eugenie and Francisco?
Yeah, I guess we met 3 times in a row.
Oh, a few times in a row. Fantastic.
Yes, in
yeah, we
in the previous classes.
yeah we
Nice.
took two classes before.
Fantastic. No, you guys are just loving Colingo. That's awesome. You guys are in all these classes. It's great. It's really good. Uh, and Marcelo, my Portuguese professor, just joined. Hey, Marcelo, how's it going?
Como está, professor?
É, tudo
Tudo
bem,
bem com
tudo bem,
você?
tudo bem, tudo beleza?
Tudo beleza? How are you doing?
Good, good, good. How are you?
Yeah, fine too. Temos the news.
Nice, nice, nice. That's great. I'm doing well,
Temos the
thanks.
news. Ah, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing going on. I'm just watching funny videos and sending you links.
Okay.
Yeah,
I saw the link you sent me. It's very, very funny.
yeah. No,
Really appreciate, I really appreciate that.
they do
Great,
some.
crazy.
It's hilarious. I have another one that I want to share with you. It's really funny as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll send it to you after. Hey Heidi, how's it going?
Hello, nice to see you again.
Hey, nice to see you too. How was your Saturday morning in sunny Osaka?
Yeah, very sunny day. I went to the clinic, and just in front of my house there's a small park. In the
Uh,
park, some kind of festival. I don't know.
Something's
And
going on. Yeah.
yeah, so they are selling yakisoba. Yakisoba is kind of Japanese noodle or bread or a lot of things.
Uh-huh. No, that's awesome. One of the things that I really miss about my city, or not my city really, but a lot of cities in the US, the city that my parents live in, every Saturday morning they have a very large uh, farmers market. So people from all different parts of the area, farmers that grow corn, right now it's mainly apples and a lot of the autumn kind of fruits. They bring all of their natural fruits to the market, and the market actually takes place in a park. And it's every Saturday morning, so most Friday nights I'm always missing that aspect because I'm not home, so I can't really join in that. But
Similar.
yeah, it's fun. There are farmers markets in many places, but the one in my town is really nice. So yeah. Well, welcome guys. We are 4 people here. I think that's pretty good. Other people might be trickling in over the next few minutes. Just wanted to introduce the class today a little bit, right? So we are going to be looking at the past perfect tense today when it comes to grammar, right? And then when it comes to the article, we are actually going to be taking a look at an interesting phenomenon that is happening in international travel, which is that more and more Americans are actually visiting Cuba. I like to focus, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but maybe, Eugenie and Francisco, you guys not so much, but I think Marcelo and Heidi, you guys have noticed that some of my articles focus on topics from countries that are not very well known about, at least in the United States. So a lot of my articles have been about North Korea. Some of them have been about Cuba. This one, once again, is about Cuba. So we'll see what the reason is behind, all these Americans traveling to Cuba, even though it's technically illegal to do that. And just all the other kind of, we'll take a trip to Cuba ourselves, right? From what I hear, it's a very beautiful country. So we will get started then, guys. Before I actually dive into the grammar lesson, I wanted to ask you guys a question to get us started. When we talk about the past perfect tense, right, we are talking about events that happen in the past, and usually we're relating 2 different events that happened in the past. Maybe one event happened before another event, right? So, that's how those are the kinds of situations that we use the past perfect in, right? So, in our particular example here, I want to ask you guys, tell me about something that you had been doing recently, right? So when we use the past perfect, we use the construction had and then a past participle, right? So tell me something that you had been doing recently. Me, for example, I had been studying recently. I was studying for an exam, right? So I had been studying, right? You guys can choose anything else you want to talk about recently that you guys were doing, right? So let's start with Eugenie on the left, Eugenie, and then we'll go all the way to the right. So something you had been doing, Eugenie.
I had been taking classes on Colingo.
Fantastic, right? I had been taking classes on Colingo, and you can say maybe for the past 3 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had been taking classes at Colingo for a few hours or for the past few hours, right? Francisco, something else from you, please.
I have been working very hard these days.
I've been working very hard these days, right? So those are both great examples, right? What about Heidi? One other example from you, please.
Okay, last week, an earthquake occurred in the northern part of Japan, where the strong earthquake occurred 3 years ago. So I was worried about that, but no damage. I'm very glad.
So you can say, what you said was really good, Heidi, but we can probably change it. I think you used just the simple past. Did you use the past perfect or did you use the simple past?
And where the strong earthquake had occurred.
Oh, had occurred. Yes, fantastic.
Fantastic. The same place.
Yes. Great, fantastic, Heidi. Thanks for repeating that last part. I didn't hear it. So yeah, another earthquake. Recently, an earthquake occurred in a place where an earthquake had occurred 3 years ago.
Yes.
Right? Fantastic. So had occurred is another example of the past perfect tense, right? And Marcelo, another example from you, please.
Yeah.
Using the past perfect, yeah.
Okay. I had been hitting the books. I mean a little bit.
I had been hitting the books in a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean I'm a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm tired, tired.
Oh, nice, 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 nice. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, we can say definitely we can say that that first part, right? I had been hitting the books, right? That's something that you were doing, right? And that's almost like actually what I had been actually testing you guys in this example was the past perfect continuous to a certain extent, because if you had been doing something, then it's the had been and then the ing verb, right? So I had been studying, or I had studied, right? I had been hitting the books. Uh-huh.
Okay. So I would say I had hit the books.
I had hitten the books, right?
Hit the books. Yeah.
Past participle of hit is hitten, right? So
Ah, okay,
I
okay.
had hitten the books, right? For example,
I
or
had hit the book.
yeah, stuff like that. Good, 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 good. Okay, guys. So my idea with that exercise was really to just get us thinking about the construction of the past perfect, right? So we have the had, we have the past participle after the had, and then we have other verbs after that past participle, right? So that's the basic way that we construct these kinds of phrases, right? Like with the past perfect tense. So I want to get started, guys, giving you guys an example. So really, the past perfect, the best use of past perfect, right, is when we are using the past perfect to talk about different events in the past relative to each other, how they are related to each other, right? For example, and the way we do it is we have one part of the sentence is using the simple past, and the second part of the sentence, or the other part of the sentence, is using the past perfect, right? That's really the best use of the past perfect, right? So, for example, my mother invited me to her house, but I had already, um, my mother invited me to her house for dinner, but I had already eaten, right? But I had already eaten my dinner, right? So I didn't want to go. My mother invited me, right? That's the simple past, but I had already eaten, right? I had already eaten. I had already, I was already, or I had already had dessert, whatever, right? You can talk about it in any way you want. Or, for example, you're talking about something that's a scheduled thing, right? Um, the bus left at 7 o'clock, or by the time we arrived, the bus had already left, right? So you're talking about you're getting somewhere. You guys arrived somewhere, right? Arrived is the simple past, but the bus had already left, right? So when we do that combination of the simple past with the past perfect, it works really well in English, comparing two events in the past, right? So can you guys give me an example of something along those lines, right? Think about two things in the past that you want to talk about, and then talk about how one of them happened before the other one, right? So to start, I'll give you guys an example, right? Um, I had been studying really hard when my friend called me, right? I had been studying really hard when my friend called me. So that is actually, guys, I jumped ahead, right? That's the past perfect continuous. Let's not do that one just yet. That'll be the next step, right? So forget about that. I had, let's see. My friend asked me to help with his homework, but I had already finished mine, right? My friend asked me to help him with his homework, but I had already finished mine, right? So I didn't want to help him. I did mine already, right? It doesn't matter. So once again, we see the combination of the simple past with the past perfect, right? So my friend asked me to help him with his homework, but I had already finished mine, right? So do you guys have any questions about how this construction is done in the first place, combining the simple past with the past perfect? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
It does make sense. Okay.
Mm,
Marcelo, does it make sense?
yeah,
It
more
does?
or
Okay.
less.
More or less good. That's good because
Yeah, just kidding. I'm
what
joking. I'm
I
joking.
sure. What I was doing earlier was, guys, I apologize for that. I was introducing the past perfect continuous next. We're going to look at that part next. But for now, just let's focus on the normal past perfect combined with the simple past, right? So, Eugenie, do you mind starting and giving us an example?
Okay, I had washed my car when rain started.
Yeah, right. Fantastic. So you could say, for example, I had washed my car, or let's try to use a word like already, right? Because
Mhm.
that tells you that something is complete, right? So for example, I had already finished, right, or something like that. I had already, and then what will be the next part?
Mhm.
Let's.
I had
Uh-huh.
already finished my. I had already washed my car. No, I had already.
Yeah, that's fine. That's great, Eugenie, right? I had already washed my car, and then now all we need is that second part with the simple past.
When rain started.
When the rain started, right?
Mhm.
Or so your sentence was perfect when you said it the first time. The only thing was that I wanted you to add an already, right? Because
Mhm.
already shows that something happened before the other event, right? So I had already washed my car when the rain started, right? We have one sentence in the past perfect, had washed or had already washed, and the second part is in the simple past, when the rain started, right? Fantastic. Now, that's a great job. Uh, Francisco, what about you, please?
My wife cooked a big dish for me, but uh, we already ate.
I already ate, or is that the past perfect? Remember, we have to use the had and as well as a past participle, right? So when we do this construction of the past perfect, right, we need to have the subject, then the word had, and then the verb in the past participle. So like I had washed, I had finished. That's how we would make this, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
My wife cooked a big dinner for me, but I had eaten before.
Yes, fantastic, fantastic. Great job, Francisco, right? We just one quick thing, Francisco. It was 99% correct. Okay?
Okay, thank
99% correct. The one thing that I would add is when you say before like that at the end of a sentence, right? You want to make the word beforehand. Beforehand, right? So I had already or my mother cooked, or I'm sorry, my wife cooked me a big dinner, but I had eaten beforehand, right? Beforehand means that you already had food before, but when we put it at the end of a sentence, we write beforehand, right? So you can say it two ways. You can say it, but I had already eaten, or I had eaten beforehand. Both of those work.
So beforehand, use it when? Excuse me.
Beforehand you can use as another way of saying already. Like I had already done something, right? Another way you can use beforehand is, for example, at the end of a sentence, right? So if you're saying that you had already eaten or you had eaten beforehand, both of those work.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but it's incorrect to end the sentence with "but I had eaten before," for example. You got to say beforehand. So
Okay.
that's the only thing. That was 99% correct, but 1% was that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, great, great. Congratulations.
That was really good. Yeah. Heidi, an example from you, please.
Yeah, I had been walking through the mall when I found temporary sweet shop. I couldn't stop buying some, even though I knew I'm gaining weight slightly.
Wow, great sentence, right? I had been walking through the mall when I noticed the temporary sweet shop. And then what was the next part, Heidi? It was a long sentence.
When I
Forgot
found
it.
the temporary sweet shop,
Uh-huh.
I couldn't stop buying some, even though I knew I'm
Okay.
gaining weight slightly.
Nice, nice, fantastic, right? So you have tons of examples there, right? The best example, is actually the one that you said at the beginning, right? So I had been walking through the mall, and that once again is the example that we're going to see in the next part of the class, right? Where it's past perfect continuous, right? And we use the past perfect continuous a lot more frequently than I think we use the normal past perfect. So great job, Heidi, with that sentence. Last but not least, Marcelo, would you mind giving us an example of a sentence using the past perfect with a past tense?
Yeah, of course. Why
Sure.
not? I had cleaned the bedroom before my parents arrived.
Fantastic, fantastic, right?
Or could I say I had already cleaned the bedroom after, no, not after, when my parents arrived.
Absolutely, absolutely, perfect, right? I had cooked dinner, or I had cooked the dinner I had cooked dinner. I'm sorry, I had already cooked dinner, right?
No. Clean
Would
it.
you,
I had cleaned the bedroom
oh,
before
clean the
my
bedroom.
parents. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. I had already cleaned the bedroom when my parents arrived, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic, right? And then what was the second example, Marcelo, again?
I had cleaned the bedroom before my parents arrived.
Fantastic. I had cleaned the bedroom before my parents arrived, right?
Yeah.
Before my parents arrived. Fantastic, right? So these are both, so Francisco, just to jump back to what we were saying before, right? When, in this example, when we use before, it's in the middle of the sentence, so it's okay, we can use before, right?
Okay.
But if before comes at the end of a sentence, then we need to say beforehand,
Okay.
right? So another way we could say this, Francisco, would be, how would we, actually, let me think of this. I want to ask the question in a way that will not be confusing. One of the phrases we can use, Francisco, and I think this is a good phrase to keep in mind, right? We see a lot of these phrases when it comes to the past perfect. We see phrases like already, right? We see phrases like before, right? Another one that's really good is by the time, right?
Okay.
By the time. So one way we could say Marcelo's first sentence would be, by the time my parents arrived, right? That's the past tense. How could we make the second part with the past perfect? So by the time my parents arrived, I
Had already.
That's right, I had already, and then what's the rest of it?
Clean the bedroom.
Fantastic, right? By the time my parents arrived, I had already cleaned the bedroom, right? So these are all just multiple ways of saying the same thing, right? And with beforehand, we can say it, I'm trying to think if there's a, we can actually forget about that. It doesn't really matter in this example. But if we do see before at the end of a sentence, like we saw with yours, Francisco, then we need to make it beforehand, that's all.
Okay.
Fantastic. Any questions, guys, about using the simple past in combination with the past perfect?
No question.
Everything's good?
Yeah, for a while, yeah.
All right, good. So let's go, guys, to the next part, right? The next part we are going to be looking at the past perfect continuous, right? And this is really what I think we use a lot more when it comes to a normal conversation, right? When we use the past perfect continuous, we are showing that there was an action that was happening in the past when something else happened, right? It was a continuing action that was happening. Something was being done, something was happening in a continuous state when something else happened, right? When there was, it can compare the order of something happened before something else, so we call that in English cause and effect, right? Cause and effect. So for example, I went to sleep very early because I had been working all day, right? I went to sleep early because I had been working all day, right? So in that example, we see had plus the word been. Been is the past participle of be, right? And last but not least, we also see another verb that ends in ing, right? This is how we make the past perfect continuous. So the first way we use it is cause and effect, right? I took a nap because I had been standing for 4 hours, right? I took a nap because I had been standing for 4 hours, right? You're saying something happened because of something else, right? The past tense happened because of some continuous past perfect action, some past perfect continuous action. So that's the first type when we see the past perfect. The second is when we are saying that we are interrupted by something that happened just once during some continuous action in the past, right? I had been working on my project when my father came home, right? I had been working on something, or I had been cooking my dinner when the fire started, let's say, right? Some fire started in the kitchen. I had been cooking my food when the fire started, right? So the first example is cause and effect. The second is just describing an interrupted action during a continuous action. Describing an action that interrupts you, I should say, during a continuous action that you were doing, right? Or during some continuous action, right? Does that make sense, guys? The construction of the past perfect continuous as well as the two ways we use it? Any questions, guys?
No.
As of right now, no? Okay. So, Eugenie, would you mind giving me an example of each of these types?
It's not that easy.
Yeah, no, but I'll help you. Trust me, man. I'll help you. Let's do the cause and effect first, right? Cause and effect, you want to use a word like because. You did something because you were doing something else, right? So, how would we do
Okay.
that?
I didn't sleep because I had been taking many classes at Uncle Ingrid.
Fantastic, fantastic. I didn't sleep, past tense, simple past tense,
Yeah.
because I had been taking Colingo classes all night.
Yeah.
Right? Fantastic, right? So, Marcelo, your question that you typed in the thing, in the chat.
Yeah, is it right or is it?
Well,
There's a mistake here.
Where's your past perfect continuous in that sentence? They're both just simple past, aren't they?
Okay.
Yeah, so if we make one of them past perfect continuous, then it'll be fine, right?
Okay.
Eugenie, could you give me another example of the second one, where an action interrupts you when you're doing a continuous action?
Okay. I was.
So remember go ahead, I'm sorry, Eugenie.
I was stopped by policemen when I had been driving through the street or down the street.
Nice. I was stopped by the policeman when I had been driving in the street. Right? Fantastic. So it's a one-time action that happened when you were doing something. Absolutely. Great job, Eugenie. 100%. Gold star.
Thank you.
Great job, both of those, right? Francisco, could you give me an example of each? Let's start with cause and effect first, please.
I was warned by the principal what I had because I had been doing bad things.
Fantastic. I was warned by the principal because I had been doing bad things, right? Or because I had been misbehaving.
Okay.
Right? Because I had been misbehaving. Yeah, misbehaving is you were doing, maybe you were making jokes and causing problems, right? Because I had been misbehaving, right? And then the second part, guys, let me just quickly say that we can also use, in that second example, we can also use before and already and those words that we saw before, right? We don't necessarily have to say an action that interrupts you. We can also just say something happened after you were doing something or before you were doing something, right? So the comparison of the past tense with the past perfect continuous can happen both ways. We can talk about an interruption or we can talk about something that happened after. So let me give you guys an example, right? So, I had been working on my homework for 3 hours before my mother came home, right? This is also another example of the past perfect using the past tense, right? But it's not really an interruption, right? We are still saying something happened before something else, except this time we are emphasizing that the action that I was doing was a continuous action. Whereas before, I was just saying I had been, or I had worked on my project. Here I'm saying I had been working on my project, right? So, Eugenie, my apologies for that. I should have mentioned this to you earlier, but this is another form of that second type. We don't always have to have an interrupted action. We can also have just an action that was continuing before another action happened. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry about that before. I was reading the notes and I was getting a little confused by that. So, okay, Francisco, my apologies again. You can choose either of those types. You can talk about an interruption, or you can talk about something that happened before or after, whatever, a continuous action for your second example, please. If I confuse you, let me know.
Okay.
Yes.
I had been repairing a computer during the day, and before my wife stopped me.
Fantastic. I had been repairing a computer during the day before my wife stopped me. Right? And why did your wife stop you, Francisco, if you don't mind me asking?
No.
Just an example, right? Just
Yeah,
an example?
example.
Okay. Making sure, right? Fantastic. But no, sometimes I think if we get so focused on computer stuff, people around us go crazy, right? So that might be a reason. Great job, Francisco. Both of those great sentences. Heidi, another example, please, from you. Two types, cause and effect, as well as the second type.
I had been looking out of the window when a big balloon ship flew from right to left slowly and then disappeared.
Fantastic. I had been looking out the window when a big balloon ship. Balloon ships, I think, Heidi, we call them blimps. Have you heard the word blimp before? This word, blimp, it's like a big balloon, but it has a little pod at the bottom and it flies across.
Yeah.
A blimp, right? Yeah. So I had been looking out the window when a big blimp or a big balloon ship crossed in front of me from left to right and then disappeared.
Yeah.
Right? Fantastic. That was a great example. A very visual example, right? And then what about something that you had been doing or something that you were continuously doing in the past perfect before another action or relative to another action?
Okay. I had been cooking dinner before my husband came back.
Fantastic, right? Fantastic. And if you wanted, you could also put it in a time also, right? So I had been cooking for 3 hours before my husband came home, something like that also, right?
Before what?
Before my husband came home in that example.
Okay.
Yeah. So some one-time thing, right? Great. Good job, Heidi. And Marcelo, last but not least, please, two sentences from you as well.
Okay. By the time I finished my studies, I had been in United States for over 5 years.
Fantastic. By the time I had finished my studies, I had been in the United States, but I'm sorry, by the time I finished my studies, I had been in the United States for over 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I had been in the United States. Can we use a continuous? We could just make one more verb that ends in ing. Instead of I had been in the United States, let's make it another. Just add one more verb and put it and end it with an ing. How could you do that, right? I studied for 5 years. By the
time I finished my studies, I have been in United States for over 5 years. But I had been in the United States.
Yeah.
Years before I finished
It's perfect, Marcelo. Your thing is perfect. It's just that you're using the past perfect and not the past perfect continuous. Right?
Okay.
So we just need one verb. So you can say, for example, I had been living in the United States for 5 years.
Okay. I got you.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
I got you.
Yep.
I had been studying in the United States for 5 years.
Yeah, or that too, right? By the time I finished my studies, I had been studying in the United States for 5 years. Yeah. Fantastic, right? And then one other example. Yeah, no problem. One other example that is cause and effect, please, for me, Marcelo. So something happened because something else. Like I took a nap because I had been standing for 4 hours. Right? So what you said before, Marcelo, let's just use that example, right? You said, I hit the sack because I was tired. How do we change that to be cause and effect using past perfect continuous?
I had hit the sack.
Well, hit the sack is just a one-time thing, right? So that can stay in the simple past. But the second one, because I was tired, how can you change that to be past perfect continuous?
I don't know.
I mean, you can say anything, right? I hit the sack because I had been,
I had
working.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it. I got it. I have been working, so I have been working a lot.
Yeah, why not, right? I hit the sack because I had been working a lot, right?
Okay, okay. I will take notes. I will take notes because I really need to study it more.
Sure, no problems. You guys had some really good points.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys, about this lesson? I know it's a little bit longer. There's a lot of pieces to it. Any questions, guys, before we move on?
No question.
No questions from you guys? Heidi, you're okay? Francisco, Eugenie, you guys okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Understood.
All right, fantastic. I feel nervous when I can't see you guys because I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Completely.
All right, guys. So let's take a look then. This article is talking about U.S. tourists who are going to Cuba, right? And for a long time, Cuba was an area that the Americans could not go to very easily because of laws and things like that. But it's actually getting much easier to visit Cuba, and we can learn about what these folks are doing in Cuba, right? So there's the link, guys, and I'm going to screen share as well so we can all take a look. And let's see what is going on in Cuba. Okay, so this looks like a very fun place, right? Look at this. U.S. tourists in Cuba rise to record numbers due to eased travel rules, right? Tourists exercise in the water in the Santa Maria Key Resort in central Cuba, right? Looks like a beautiful island. I mean, look at the beautiful water and all this stuff, right? Looks like a very fun place. Americans are visiting Cuba in record numbers despite strict travel restrictions, joining the hundreds of thousands of Cuban Americans who travel home each year, according to Cuban government figures published on Friday. Just over 98,000 U.S. citizens visited Cuba in 2012, up from 73,500 in 2011, and twice the number compared with 5 years ago, according to an online report by the National Statistics Office. The numbers do not include more than 350,000 Cuban Americans, estimated by travel agents and U.S. diplomats, to have visited the island last year. Because Cuba considers them nationals, they are not listed in its tourism statistics. U.S. citizens are barred from traveling to Cuba without government permission under a U.S. trade embargo imposed half a century ago that can only be lifted by Congress. The rise in U.S. visitors partly reflects a loosening of travel restrictions by President Barack Obama's administration and allow people-to-people contact aimed at speeding political change on the communist-ruled island 90 miles from Florida. As well as allowing Cuban Americans to travel to Cuba freely, Obama authorized licenses for purposeful travel to more than 250 Cuba travel agents and allowed more airports to provide charter service between the two countries. The program, which began in 2011 and requires annual renewal of permission to bring groups to Cuba, allows for educational and cultural travel. The regulations require detailed itineraries of each traveling group. Cuba hosted 2.8 million tourists in 2012, with arrivals down 2% so far this year. Cuba has so much to offer in terms of culture, history, and issues of mutual concern, healthcare, education, and the environment. And students, professionals, people of faith are curious, said Colin Laverty, head of travel provider Cuba Educational Travel. In the years following Cuba's 1959 revolution, when Fidel Castro took power, the highest known number of U.S. visitors peaked at 70,000 under President Bill Clinton, but dropped to an average of 30,000 in the last term of President George W. Bush. Travel to Cuba is seen as a key political issue by both embargo supporters and opponents in Washington. This is not about promoting a democracy and freedom in Cuba. This is nothing more than tourism, a source of millions of dollars in the hands of the Castro government that they use to oppress the Cuban people. Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida told a congressional hearing soon after Obama instituted the policy. Right. Theodore Picone, Deputy Director of Foreign Policy at the Washington-based Brookings Institute that advocates engagement, said Obama should do more to open travel to Cuba. He said that it was ironic that Cubans, due to reforms on the island, were now free to travel where they pleased, while U.S. citizens were not. American travel to Cuba will remain a small fraction of its potential as long as President Obama avoids a further liberalization of travel, he said. If the Cuban government can open travel to its citizens, which it now has, why can't we? Right? So kind of an interesting article. There's a lot of politics involved, right? And I think in the middle of politics, there's the issue of what the relationship between these two countries actually means, right? And I mean, what do you guys think about this, right? Cuba, would you travel to Cuba? Would you guys travel to Cuba if you guys had the chance? Is it a place on your travel destination? Let's start with Marcelo on the right this time. Marcelo, you there? Okay, guys, let's go to Heidi. Heidi, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Sure, I want to go to Cuba.
You would like to go to Cuba?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Samba, and very good weather.
Fantastic weather, right? Seems like there's fantastic food, right?
And
Great,
beautiful buildings. All the
beautiful.
buildings.
Yeah, so much culture, right? So much culture and so much amazing stuff to be had, right? Unfortunately, though, because of politics, this situation is a little bit more dangerous, right? At least for people in the U.S., it's more hasslesome, right?
But recently, 64-year-old woman swam from Florida to Cuba.
Yeah, exactly. So that was
Very
the
strong woman.
yeah, right. She's I think the oldest person to ever swim across that area in the water without a shark cage. She swam without a shark cage. Yeah.
Oh, dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah, Francisco, it seems like Marcelo just went to Cuba. He saw the article and he left, right? What do you think, Francisco, about Cuba? Is it somewhere that you would like to visit? Have you visited already?
No, I haven't visited Cuba, but I think it's a wonderful country. I like to visit it in the next years. So I think it's very interesting that the U.S. government has opened these travels to Cuba, because if they have this revenue, well, if they gain tourism, they are going to improve their lives.
Yeah, absolutely right. Tourism is a big source of money for people in Cuba, but that's also a little controversial, right? Because like that senator in the article, Francisco, the guy Marco Rubio, he said, he said that Americans are actually supporting the communist government by going there and giving them the money from tourism. Do you agree with that, Francisco?
Well, I hope that the U.S. government open up and freeze all the lags to Cubans, because they are friendly, they are good people, and they deserve a better life.
Yeah. I definitely think that there should be more on that side, right? I mean, 1959 is how many years ago now? 54, 55 years now? I mean, it's ridiculous how long this will last. That generation is already in its 80s. I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Francisco.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful country, and it's only 90 miles from Florida. So I think the US should 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 go there. Most of the people should go there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's a beautiful place.
I definitely think so. And I definitely think people's understanding of Cuba will increase if they get to actually explore the culture, right? Fantastic. Eugenie, what do you think about Cuba?
I think it's a nice place to visit, and I wouldn't mind to visit Cuba.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great place actually. And what would you do in particular if you went there? We talked about the food, the culture, the architecture, the beaches. What would
Um,
you like to do?
I would eat every possible food that I can find on local markets.
Uh-huh.
Smoke cigars,
Smoke cigars. Yeah,
drink
that's a big
rum.
thing. That's awesome, right? I think that those are really good points, right? We have I have to tell you guys a story. I think somebody else already heard this before. But when my friends and I were in Canada, right, one of them decided to buy a very expensive Cuban cigar. Canada has relationships with Cuba, but we don't. So there are no Cuban cigars in the U.S., right, because of the embargo. So we went to Canada. First thing we did in Canada was drive to the nearest cigar store and buy a Cuban cigar. And he really enjoyed it. He smoked a little bit. He shared with another person. It was really a good experience, I think, for them. Um, Now, guys, would it be? Do you guys think that when we talk about tourism, for example, between these countries, right? Um, what is the benefit in having easier rules to travel between one country and another? What can the ease of travel do to bring two countries closer together? What do you guys think? Let's start with Marcelo. Can you hear us still?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think the ease of travel, like if America makes it easier for Americans to go to Cuba, how do you think the relationship will improve? Or how do you think the relationship will be between Cuba and America? Will it get better? Will it get worse? What do you think?
I know that in Brazil it's easier to go to Cuba because you don't need a visa. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I think that you don't need a visa to get to go to Cuba. So I think it's interesting. As
Yeah.
if, when you need to go to Argentina too, for instance, you don't need to visa to get a
Mm-hmm.
visa.
Mm-hmm.
So this connection, this behavior between two countries, I think it's benefit from both sides. I think it's awful. It's interesting. So
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I think the rest of Latin America and the rest of the Western Hemisphere really has amazing relationships with Cuba. The only country that doesn't is the United States, I think, because they
yeah,
have this 65-year-old or 55-year-old rule that, because of Fidel Castro and the communists and all that stuff, right? It's something that's still a very sensitive topic for America. But Heidi, what do you think? Do you think intercultural travel helps the relationship between two countries?
Yes, the relationship between Cuba and America is very similar to the North Korea and Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Our passport it's written except North Korea, we can go anywhere.
Really?
Hmm.
Why is that? Why North Korea?
North Korean before Kim Jong Il, um, what ab- abducted a lot of Japanese people.
Oh, that's right. I remember his sushi chef, actually. I think he kidnapped from Japan.
Yes, yes. Youngest
Yeah.
girl was at that time only 13 years old.
Yeah. So, besides North Korea, then Japanese people can go to any other country, right?
Mm. And
Yeah.
after that, they are very poor. Sometimes the people are died for starving. Then they ask some food. The government will send food, but the food didn't reach the poor people. It was sold in the black market.
Yeah. it's a bad life, bad life there. But I think, I mean, even after, for example, terrible wars and terrible kind of relationship difficulties between countries, like, I mean, in World War II, you know, the rest of the world, it was, you know, America and France and whatever fighting against a lot of those countries. You know, Japan was an enemy of the United States in World War II, but I think after World War II ended and everything happened, right now the relationship is great. I mean, Japanese people are coming to America, Americans going to Japan, right? And the World War II was really only 14, 15 years older than this conflict, right? I mean, you know, 1959 is about 15 years after the end of World War II, right? So it's still this Cold War mentality, right? Red versus blue, communist versus democracy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it really helps the people of Cuba. I mean, they seem like really great people. They don't deserve this kind of bad relationship between the U.S. and Cuba.
So we
Right?
have bad image of North Korea, and
Yeah.
even North Korean government always broadcast the Japanese drama about Japan World War II. Japan had bad things like that, so they
Yeah.
have bad image about Japan.
Uh-huh. No, that makes sense. Francisco, I want to ask you a question using the past perfect continuous, if you don't mind. What do you think these people in the photo had been doing right before this picture was taken?
Which persons?
The people in the photo in the article, what do you think they had been doing before this photo was taken?
Well, they had been doing some exercise because Cuba have lots of doctors, good doctors.
Uh-huh. They have lots of good. What was the last word, Francisco?
Doctors
Doctors?
or healthy or health.
Health conscious people, like they have
Yeah.
very healthy people. Sure. So they were maybe exercising. They had been doing exercises. They had been exercising because they have such a healthy lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Cuba has the best doctors in the world, I think.
Yeah.
They have really good doctors, right? Eugenie, what do you think these people in the photo had been doing before this picture was taken?
I don't know, maybe they were swimming.
Maybe
Person.
they had been.
Oh, they had been swimming.
Exactly, right? So maybe these people had been swimming, right? Fantastic. Heidi, what do you think these folks were doing or had been doing before the photo was taken?
Sure, they were relaxing.
They had
They had been relaxing
they had been
when
relaxing.
someone shot that picture.
Yeah, right. Absolutely, absolutely. And Marcelo, what do you think these folks had been doing before this picture was taken?
They had been swimming and hanging around.
Yeah, they've been hanging out. They've been deep sea diving, maybe, right? Deep swimming or deep sea diving. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, I want to go one day if I can. If I get permission, I would love to go and see the country and practice my Espanol and see the culture. Yeah, guys, we don't have too much time left. I just wanted to use the last couple of minutes. Did we have any questions about the article? Looking at, you guys can share anything you guys want about Cuba. I would love to hear, or about past perfect continuous, past perfect normal. Any other questions? Oh, Francisco, maybe they had been drinking some rum. Yeah, why not, right? Is rum very famous in Cuba, actually, Francisco? I don't know if it is. Do you know, Francisco? I think maybe the internet is kind of being a little bad there, guys. Any other questions, guys? Marcelo, Heidi, Eugenie?
No questions.
I have no question.
No questions? You guys sure?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I got another class starting now, and if you guys have any questions, of course, feel free. You can always ask me anytime, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Then.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
Bye.
bye-bye.
You're welcome, guys. Take care,
Bye-bye.
guys. Have a good one. Bye bye. Wow, man. On a Saturday too. That's crazy.
Yes, yes.
You didn't go out to party or anything last
I
night?
didn't go to I didn't go to sleep.
You didn't go to sleep. Wow.
Yes.
So you were partying all night.
Yes, and with Kalingo.
Nice, nice. Fantastic, man. Good to see you again. I was uh I was thinking about our class earlier today with the animals. I was thinking all day today after that class.
Yes.
So it was kind of funny. But yeah, it's one of these things that I think is kind of really interesting that kind of a universal appeal to different things, both with baby animals and some of the other things we're going to look at. So, but yeah, man. How was your Friday night? Did you do anything interesting in any of the other classes? Did you learn some new stuff?
Yes, I definitely learned a lot of new stuff, new vocabulary, and knew some grammar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, One of the things that I wanted to also make sure about is did you have any questions about the stuff we talked about earlier today by any chance, or did that stuff make sense?
Mm, I don't remember my
I
classic answer.
Yeah, I think we talked
But
about contractions and like is am is are or the is not am not
yeah,
negation.
I remember that, but my consciousness is a little bit fuzzy right now, so I I can
Oh,
say
okay. Okay. That's fine. No worries, man. And whenever you have questions, just let me know and I'll be able to help you out
yeah,
with anything.
okay.
Yeah, sweet. Francisco, how's it going? Welcome.
Hi Farhan, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
Fine, fine, thank you.
How was your Friday night?
Well, it's been a kind of busy today, but I'm here at home and I'm enjoying this class.
Fantastic, fantastic. Welcome. Uh, have you guys met each other before, Eugenie and Francisco?
Yeah, I guess we met 3 times in a row.
Oh, a few times in a row. Fantastic.
Yes, in
Yeah,
in the previous classes.
we took
Nice.
two classes before.
Fantastic. Now you guys are just loving Colingo. That's awesome. You guys are in all these classes. It's great. It's really good. Uh, so, and Marcelo, my Portuguese professor, just joined. Hey, Marcelo, how's it going?
Como está, professor?
Tudo
Tudo bem
bem,
com
tudo bem,
você?
tudo bem, tudo beleza?
Tudo beleza? How are you doing?
Good, good, good. How are you?
Yeah, fine too. Tell me the news.
Nice, nice, nice. That's great. I'm doing
Tell
well,
me the
thanks.
news. Ah, okay.
Yeah, there's nothing going on. I'm just watching funny videos and sending you links.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw the link you sent me. It's very, very funny.
Yeah, no,
Really appreciate, I really appreciate that.
they do
Great,
some
crazy.
it's hilarious. I have another one that I want to share with you. It's really funny as well.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll send it to you after. Hey Heidi, how's it going?
Hello, nice to see you again.
Hey, nice to see you too. How was your Saturday morning in sunny Osaka?
Yeah, very sunny day. I went to the clinic, and just in front of my house there's a small park. In the
Uh,
park, some some kind of festival. I don't know.
Something's
Mm.
going on. Yeah. What the reason is behind, all these Americans traveling to Cuba, even though it's technically illegal to do that, and just all the other kind of, we'll take a trip to Cuba ourselves, right? From what I hear, it's a very beautiful country. So we will get started then, guys. Before I actually dive into the grammar lesson, I wanted to ask you guys a question to get us started. Uh, when we talk about the past perfect tense, right, we are talking about events that happened in the past, and usually we're relating two different events that happened in the past. Maybe one event happened before another event, right? So, those are the kinds of situations that we use the past perfect in, right? So, in our particular example here, I want to ask you guys, tell me about something that you had been doing recently. right? So when we use the past perfect, we use the construction had and then a past participle, right? So tell me something that you had been doing recently. Me, for example, I had been studying recently. I was studying for an exam, right? So I had been studying, right? You guys can choose anything else you want to talk about recently that you guys were doing, right? So let's start with Eugenie on the left, Eugenie, and then we'll go all the way to the right. So something you had been doing, Eugenie.
I had been taking classes on Kalingo.
Fantastic, right? I had been taking classes on Colingo, and you can say maybe for the past 3 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had been taking classes at Colingo for a few hours or for the past few hours, right? Francisco, something else from you,
I,
please.
I have been working very hard these days.
Uh-huh. I've been working hard, very hard these days, right?
Yeah, so they are selling yakisoba. Yakisoba is kind of Japanese noodle or bread or a lot of things.
Uh-huh. No, that's awesome. One of the things that I really miss about my city, or not my city really, but a lot of cities in the US, the city that my parents live in, every Saturday morning they have a very large uh, farmers market. So people from all different parts of the area, farmers that grow corn, right now it's mainly apples and, a lot of the autumn kind of fruits. They
Mm-hmm.
bring they bring all of their natural fruits to the market, and the market actually takes place in a park. Uh, and it's every Saturday morning, so most Friday nights I'm always missing
Mm-hmm.
that aspect because I'm not home, so I can't really join in that. But
Similar.
yeah, yeah, it's fun. There are farmers markets in many places, but the one in my town is really nice. So yeah. Well, welcome, guys. We are 4 people here. I think that's pretty good. Other people might be trickling in over the next few minutes. Um, just wanted to introduce the class today a little bit, right? So we are going to be looking at the past perfect tense today when it comes to grammar, right? And then when it comes to the article, we are actually going to be taking a look at an interesting phenomenon that is happening in international travel, which is that more and more Americans are actually visiting Cuba. Um, I like to focus, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but maybe, Eugenie and Francisco, you guys not so much, but I think Marcelo and Heidi, you guys have noticed that some of my articles focus on topics from countries that are not very well known about, at least in the United States. So a lot of my articles have been about North Korea. Some of them have been about Cuba. This one, once again, is about Cuba. So we'll see what. Hey, how's it going, Eugenie?
Good morning. Nice to see you. It's fine.
Good,
Nothing
good.
to, nothing to complain.
Fantastic, fantastic. I I'm really glad that you're joining the classes. What time is it right now in Russia?
6 a.m.
6 a.m.